Thanks all. We have a couple minutes for questions. Are there any? Carl?
There is one. There's a question from online. We've got our first online question. I think it was for Artie, but anybody can answer it. The question comes from a caller on the East Pennsylvania area. You talked a little bit and voiced some concerns about it. I'm trying to paraphrase the question. Concerns about a pipeline that's being converted from natural gas to liquids, but it'll carry HVLs. And the question is, HVLs are a different monster. They're not always liquid, they're not always gas, even in the pipeline. So does it make sense to have HVLs dealt with under the liquid regulations or the gas regulations, or should they have their own set of regulations? So answer that in 1 minute.
Here. There you go.
I think I may need some help on this one, because I would assume that we would handle it under the liquid regulations, because we would consider it a liquid and they'd fall under Part 195. And anytime they have and I probably should have mentioned this, anytime they're converting from a liquid to gas or gas to a liquid and they're reversing the flow, there's very stringent requirements that the pipeline operators have to meet. We essentially treat these projects as new construction projects, but we would have them meet the requirements of the Part 195 if it was a liquid.
Yeah, and I think the point this person was trying to make is that, you know, HVLs are kind of the weird, because if they get out of the pipeline, at some point they're going to start acting like a gas, but we don't deal with like impact zones around liquid pipelines. So is there a need for some kind of different regulations on HVLs since they're kind of liquid and they're kind of gas?
I understand what you're saying, and we had an incident in Georgia where it was a liquid propane pipeline that ruptured, and of course as soon as it reaches the environment, it's in the gaseous state, and propane being heavier than air is going to go to the low-lying areas, so it does pose some different risks, but we treated that as a liquid pipeline.
Any other takers?
I knew who that caller was, but and actually this is another call based on Pennsylvania experience. So you folks have talked about the lessons learned in Aliso Canyon, and Ian, you mentioned that specifically that in Pennsylvania, Mariner is a very contentious pipeline where circa 1930 pipes are in the ground. They've been repurposed. They're in many cases located very close to school properties. As I said yesterday, our communities are really depending on PHMSA. They're doing their homework. They're really checking out what the safety factors are, and they're doing risk analysis, and they're very, very diligent. So some of these pipelines are about 600 feet from schools, 600 yards in some cases. They're very close to schools. And one of the issues is the absence of plans for the safe on-foot evacuation of hundreds of children in schools if a spill should occur, and the absence of any kind of monitoring system that would alert the school personnel that there could be a safety risk. So my question is, how can you use your lessons learned from Aliso, you know, the evacuation plans, educated response before an emergency, and land use permitting, which I know is a whole different arena, but how can you use those lessons learned to be proactive and create a system where we do require evacuation plans in those circumstances for hazardous liquids? Thank you.
I guess it's my region, so I need to talk. No, I appreciate that question. We have been receiving some calls from, actually there was one school supervisor, I think it was near either Media or Radnor Township in Pennsylvania. And the invite has been made for us, either myself, Karen, Gentili, or both of us to come out to start talking about emergency response actions or emergency response plans with the school board, the town supervisors, and local emergency responders. Personally, I'm not that familiar with the lessons learned from Aliso Canyon, so I can't really speak on how that's going to tie into mirroring any type of similar response plans. But our goal is to go out there, establish communications with these folks, and discuss the emergency response plans, evacuation strategies, and things of that nature. PHMSA also sponsors a program that's called PERI, and it's an emergency responders initiative that we're really trying to get all states involved with, and that addresses emergency response, roles of emergency responders, training, further awareness on the pipelines and the hazards associated with the pipelines and their commodities that are transported. But we're actively reaching out to these people that are calling us and reaching out, to find out what they can do in an absence of answers to their questions. I hope that helped on that.
We're out of time. Sorry.
We're off to a break.
Yeah, we're going to take a break and we'll be back at 11 o'clock. And I'll just point out that as the NEB said this morning, NEB is now making companies post their emergency response plans online so you can see whether they're talking to schools or not.